Just a quick thanks to Mobalytics for partnering with me on this video. More on that in just a moment. Hey guys, it's Ndoplex and welcome back to Borderlands 4, and I have the long-awaited AMON build guide here today. This build is going to be a mid to late game build guide. I am level 38, as you can see in the bottom left, and if you're kind of pushing through the story, level 38 is probably going to be somewhere around you're going to finish the game. So this build will take you all the way to the end of the main story and beyond. It is absolutely fantastic, and I'm going to showcase it here for you today. Now, just a quick word of warning, there are going to be some tiny mild spoilers in this video, nothing story related, nothing like that, but there are some areas that will take you sort of 10 hours to get to them in the game. So if you're worried about spoiling some sort of mid-game areas, maybe click off this video and come back and watch it later. But this AMON build is going to quite easily take you through all of the mid-game and well into the end game. Now, while it's not an early game build, that's because one of the key things you need for this build you can't get until level 15, and really the early game of Borderlands 4 isn't super difficult. So if you're having trouble there, maybe I'll make a early game build guide, but for now this is going to be the mid to late game build guide. Now, I am playing on hard difficulty, but it doesn't matter, this build will work on any difficulty, and like I say, I am level 38, and so there are still a few extra skill points to spec in, and I might advise you at the end of this build where those kind of want to go if you want those extra 12 skill points to make this build even better at level 50. But as for now, we are focused primarily on Scourge. Scourge is the action skill where we're going to equip a big shield and a big whip, and this is going to provide us pretty much frontal immunity and also provide us a ridiculous amount of damage thanks to our augment, which we're going to be using is Eternal Winter. Now, while you have your shield up, you are going to have the option to press the action skill, which is going to send out these forge waves, and these forge waves will deal damage. Now, the thing that makes this absolutely ridiculous is that we are actually going to get action skill duration restoration every time we use one of this forge whip, and this does not have to be a forge whip that's consuming vengeance. Vengeance is something that is applied to AMON whenever he takes damage. Well, whenever he absorbs damage with his frontal shield, he will charge up this vengeance meter in the bottom left. This is not needed at all for this build to work. The vengeance meter, all it's going to do is increase the damage of these whips, but realistically, you're better off just spamming these and not at all waiting for this vengeance meter to build up. Now, with this Eternal Winter augment, it is going to make it so that you can have 100% uptime in your Scourge shield, meaning that you can be constantly throwing out all those forge whips and also taking that full damage absorption frontally anyway. And providing that you're a little bit strategic, you won't really be getting shot in the back too much anyway. So this build essentially makes you immortal with AMON while also providing some insane damage to boot. So if I quickly, before talking about the build, if I head over to these target dummies, this is in a slightly later area of the game, nothing too crazy though. Head over to these target dummies. Big props to Gearbox for actually putting these in the game, allowing us to change the different health types and different damage intervals to see how our DPS is stacking up. Regardless, that doesn't matter here. All I'm going to showcase to you guys is that when we throw out our forge whips, you can see at the bottom, that is our bar that is going to drain as we are using this. It just drains over time, and providing I'm throwing out these forge whips, it is going to stay restored. Now, if I just keep spamming my action skill button here, you can see the damage racking up on the dummy, but that isn't really what I'm too interested in here. All I'm showcasing is that if you keep spamming these action skills, you can have 100% uptime on this. You can see we're back to full now, and yeah, this action skill can be permanently active, which is just absolutely insane, allowing us to throw out all of these forge wave damages and also absorb all damage frontally, like I mentioned before, making this a very strong build indeed for survivability, as well as putting out some absolutely insane damage. So with that augment showcase, what are we actually spec'd into this build? Well, this is going to be an ordnance damage focused build, because these forge waves that we fire out with our whip, these are going to deal cryo ordnance damage, which is very important. So any damage that buffs ordnance damage or cryo damage is going to be essential for this build. We are spec'd 5 points into Scorched Kairos, meaning we have increased ordnance damage and magazine size. Next 5 points go into Tail of the Comet, meaning that whenever we deal ordnance damage, there is a chance to apply cryo status effect that deals additional cryo damage over time. This is 30% application chance and 60% of the damage that we deal per second, which stacks up to a ridiculous number. Next, we are spec'd into Eternal, meaning that we have increased action skill duration, because this augment Eternal Winter is going to provide you a percentage-based restoration. So if we have a longer action skill duration, each one of these whips is going to restore a higher number of seconds, basically allowing us to have better uptime on our action skill here. We have 5 points into Ancient Ways, just giving us a flat 30% cryo damage bonus, which is going to work for our forge waves like mentioned before. This also works for all of your weapons, ordnance damage, all that sort of stuff, but the forge waves is the primary focus of this build. We then spec 5 points into blackout. Blackout is a really important skill. It's going to allow all of our ordnance to crit, which means all of these forge waves that we throw out, they have a chance to crit. This is a 15% chance, which doesn't seem super high, but you do end up critting quite a lot throughout this build. And when we crit, we are going to deal shock damage, and the shock damage of our crit is 105% of the damage dealt per second. So if we hit a crit, then we're going to get double that damage applied as shock damage per second. So this can get absolutely crazy with some things that are going to increase our elemental effect damage and stuff like that. So this blackout skill here is really important. And now, importantly, with these two damage types here is we are dealing primarily cryo and shock damage. And I will throw up a little damage chart on the screen now to show you guys exactly what the weaknesses are of these enemies. Essentially, cryo is going to work really well against those armored yellow health bar enemies, and then the shock is going to work really well against any shielded enemies, making this very good. And cryo and shock are both pretty okay against flesh enemies as well. So we kind of cover all damage types here, meaning that we don't get stuck behind some ridiculous shields or stuck behind some insanely difficult armored enemies. So this build ends up working very, very well for pretty much all types of content in the game. As you can see here, we're not spec'd down into any capstones here. The capstones on the blue tree aren't super important for this build. However, if I did have the extra 10 points to spend, I would probably go down into maybe smelter to get some forge skill cooldown, and then we'd get wrathful to allow us to deal that giant shock ordnance sword that always crits. It's not a bad skill to just have as a little bit of bonus damage. As a side note, we have our forge skill here, which is firewall. Firewall doesn't really do an awful lot for this build. You can just throw it out to provide you a little bit of bonus cover, and when you shoot through, you do deal a little bit more damage, but Firewall is very much not key to this build. Now, the rest of our points are actually spec'd into the Onslaughter skill tree, because here we can get a kill skill called Impetuous, meaning that we get increased shield regeneration rate and movement speed for this duration. Now, the movement speed at level 3 is 9% per stack, so we're essentially getting a 30% movement speed bonus, which is great, allowing us to kind of zip from target to target and get as many kills as possible, because whenever we are dealing damage with the whip, that is when we're able to restore our action skill. So it's important to be able to get to targets quickly to be able to keep that 100% uptime on our Scourge action skill. We have 2 points into heavy plate here just to get a little bit of extra shields and overshield capacity. None of these other skills are really worth it, and that allows us to get down to the next tier, which is going to be Gut Punch. Now, Gut Punch is a fantastic passive, and what this does is it allows our melee damage and ordnance damage to have a chance to apply weakness to enemies for a duration. This weakness means that the enemies deal 40% less damage and also take 20% more damage. So it's a flat 20% damage bonus on all damage applied to the enemies, and they'll be dealing a little bit less damage to you. We are blocking all of the damage from the front, but if a few enemies sneak behind, this is good for some extra damage reduction from these extra enemies, but it's more important for the increased 20% damage that they're going to take. And then Wield the Storm, which gives us bonus status effect damage and effect duration. This is amazing when spec'd into all of this stuff, because we're getting that cryo, status effect damage and duration, and also that shock like we mentioned before. Now, a few more points, like I say, would be great. We could spec one more into Wield the Storm, which I would definitely recommend doing. Forged in Steel is also good. Whenever we activate our Firewall, we just become immune for 6 seconds, which is just great. Now, immune for all damage is much better than unkillable, because unkillable would mean that we can get down to 1 HP but we can't die, whereas immune to all damage means if we pop this and we're full health, full shields, we won't take any drop in shields and health, we will just stay fully immune. So immune is actually a very strong passive ability, and so if we can put 1 point into here, 1 point into here, and then we'll put some points down into Smelter to get that Forge skill back more often, and then Wrathful as well, just to kind of finish up this build, but is absolutely not essential. The only real essential part of this build is allowing you to get down to Eternal Winter, the Augment. That is going to be the bread and butter of this build. Now, as far as weapons, rep kits, ordnance, that sort of stuff, this doesn't really matter. There are a few recommendations that I can give you, but most of our damage is going to be coming from those forge waves. And I would say if you can get a good ordnance rocket or something like that, that will allow you to deal massive damage to a lot of boss enemies, because our forge waves are going to be mainly focused on dealing ad clear, and then we can put on our ordnance with all of our ordnance damage bonuses, which obviously apply to our forge waves, but then they also apply to our ordnance weapon here, meaning that we do put out some ridiculous ordnance damage as well. As for the weapons, I have a rangefinder just because it's a legendary I found. I'm using a Jacob shotgun. Jacob shotguns are great, but like I say, we are pretty much going to be fully in our action skill Scourge and using our Scourge whips, so you really won't find us shooting very often at all. As for our rep kit, this is just one I picked up over time, doesn't really matter at all. Our class mod, now the class mod is pretty good. If you can find one with bonus action skill duration, that's great, because of course we want to try and keep a maximum uptime on our Scourge action skill as possible. Also, we do have bonus splash damage on here, which is going to help with some of our kind of rocket damage and also the forge wave damage as well. For our enhancement, we are using a Torg enhancement because I have a Torg ordnance rocket here, and this kind of bonus 25% damage in radius is going to apply to our Torg ordnance here. So that's a good little combo to have there. And for our shield, now if you can get the shield, it is amazing. It drops from a boss later in the game. I'm not going to say who because I don't want to spoil anything, but the Super Soldier is probably one of the strongest shields in the entire game. This is absolutely ridiculous. While our shield is full, it's going to grant us fire rate, movement speed, but most importantly, it's going to regen ammo per second. And what's absolutely absurd about this shield, and I think they will end up changing it, is this regen of ammo per second actually works with rockets. So if I actually go out of my menu here and put our rocket on, if I fire a rocket, you can see at the bottom of the screen, back up at 7, back up at 7, back up at 7, back up at 7, because we are restoring 1 rocket ammo per second. So it allows you to have infinite uptime on your ordnance rockets, which is just absolutely broken. I do not know why it regenerates rocket ammo as well as regular ammo, because if I swap over to my shotgun and shoot, you can see I'm getting that ammo regen for the shotgun, which you might expect. Okay, that would be pretty good, but not broken. But when you can get that ammo regen for ordnance, it becomes absolutely absurd. And like I mentioned before, we are not taking a lot of damage, so our shield is going to be full 90% of the time because of our full damage absorption with Scourge. So we essentially get 100% uptime on our ordnance rockets as well as our Scourge whip action skill. So yeah, you can see this build gets pretty out of hand very, very quickly. And if you want to see this build all laid out nicely on a website, I'm actually partnered with Mobilytics, so I will put a link to the description where you can find this build over at mobilytics.com. Please go over there and check it out as well, because that would directly support this channel, and I would really appreciate it if you did so. So that's going to about do it for today for this Frost Knight Amon build, an absolutely insane build. I'm having so much fun with Amon. I know a lot of people have said he's the quote-unquote weakest of the Vault Hunters, but I'm going to do my absolute best to prove you otherwise, that this Viking Forge Knight is an absolute badass on the battlefield. And you should definitely keep your eyes on this channel if you want to see some more Amon builds. As for the rest of the video, I am going to play some footage of me just absolutely slaughtering some enemies with this build, taking out a few bosses to show you guys that it can boss very well as well. And then I will catch you in the next video for some more Borderlands 4 content. Make sure to like and subscribe to this video. And like I said before, there is a link to the Mobilytics build in the description down below. And there's also a link to my Discord channel if you fancy joining our community over there. Thanks for watching, guys. Take care, and I will see you next time. Bye-bye.